The Houston sun had a way of roasting patience straight off people. Even at 9 in the morning, the air outside my condo shimmered like it was auditioning for a mirage. I used to love that view, the city skyline glittering like ambition itself. But lately, even the gold-tipped towers looked like they were mocking me. I'm Maya Jefferson, 32, accountant turned business analyst, lover of black coffee and bad decisions disguised as men in designer suits. My mother used to say, "You have a mind sharper than a blade and a heart too soft for its own good." She wasn't lying, because 2 years ago I married Terrence Cole. And if heartbreak had a fragrance, his would be imported arrogance mixed with cologne from a duty-free store. We met at a financial seminar downtown. I was the guest speaker, standing in a navy blazer, explaining cash flow to a room full of people who'd rather be anywhere else. Terrence sat near the front, sharp haircut, confident smirk, asking questions that weren't really questions, just opportunities to sound clever. After the session, he told me my presentation felt like a TED Talk and a sermon had a baby. I laughed, and before I knew it, we were exchanging numbers and inside jokes. Back then, I had just inherited $1.2 million from my late grandmother, money she'd built over decades from rental properties and stock investments. I wasn't flashy about it. I paid off my condo, bought a modest car, and poured the rest into a quiet investment portfolio. Terrence didn't know about it at first. I liked that. I wanted to be loved for me, not for my bank balance. But Terrence had a way of noticing what you didn't say. The first time he came over, he glanced around my living room like a realtor sizing up a listing. "You live nice, baby," he said, running a hand over the leather armrest. "This place screams stability." I should have known then. Stability was his love language. He had charm that could convince a cactus to drink water. We went on dates where he insisted on paying. Well, insisting after I offered, of course. He once told me, "Maya, I'm not one of those men who feels threatened by a successful woman. I find it sexy." That's how he got me. Because I dated men who wanted to borrow money faster than they borrowed my heart. Men who claimed to admire independence, but the moment you didn't need them, they called you too masculine. Terrence seemed different. He wanted to build with me. 6 months in, he proposed at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the city lights. "You're my forever," he said, slipping a ring on my finger. It sparkled, but not as brightly as his smile when I said yes. Marriage was decent at first. We moved into a bigger home, a brick house in Sugar Land with an open kitchen and a mortgage that made my eyebrows sweat. I paid for most of the down payment. Terrence said his business was in a slow season. He ran a marketing agency, or at least, that's what his LinkedIn claimed. In the beginning, I didn't question it. I was raised to believe in partnership. I handled the bills while he networked and promised big deals were coming. I told myself it was temporary. Then one day, while doing laundry, I found a receipt from a jewelry store in his jacket pocket. An expensive bracelet, definitely not mine. When I asked him, he said, "Oh, baby, that's for a client's wife. Part of relationship building." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But something about the word relationship burned a hole in my trust. 2 months later, he started dropping hints about joint accounts. "Maya, we're married now. What's yours is mine, right?" I'd laugh it off. "We can discuss that after your slow season ends." He'd sigh dramatically, as if financial caution were a personal insult. "You think I'd ever take advantage of you?" I didn't answer, because deep down I wasn't sure. Then came my grandmother's lawyer. Apparently, a clause in her will had matured. Another $800,000 from an investment fund she'd left in my name, meant to be released 2 years after her passing. The timing couldn't have been worse, or better, depending on who you ask. I didn't tell Terrence. I transferred the funds into a new account and quietly started expanding my portfolio. I bought shares in a small logistics startup that was struggling but promising. I spent nights studying their reports, crunching numbers, calculating risks. Terrence thought I was watching boring documentaries. But 6 months later, that startup signed a major contract with an energy firm. My investment tripled. Suddenly, I wasn't just an heiress, I was a self-made millionaire. Again. And still I told no one. Especially not the man who now spent more time at the office than in our home. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. He walked in smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't mine and said, "We need to talk." The words that followed could have frozen Houston's humidity. "Maya," he began, "I've been thinking. Maybe we rushed into this. I love you, but maybe I loved the idea of us more than the reality." He didn't even look guilty, just inconvenienced. I stood there in silence, holding the dinner I'd cooked, his favorite honey-baked salmon. "You're leaving?" I finally asked. He hesitated, then exhaled. "I think it's best. Look, we can sort everything out like adults. You've got your inheritance, I've invested my time, so." I blinked. "You've invested your what?" "My time," he repeated. "We built a life together. That has value, Maya." I almost laughed. "Are you seriously asking for a payout because you wasted 2 years pretending to love me?" His jaw tightened. Legally, I could be entitled to half. Texas is a community property state. I placed the plate down gently, because what I really wanted to do was throw it. "Terrence," I said sweetly, "the only community you belong to is the one that believes in get-rich-quick schemes." He glared. "You think you're better than me because you got lucky with inheritance money?" "No," I said, stepping closer. "I think I'm better because I worked for what I have, and you plan to live off it." He left that night, slammed the door so hard the picture frames rattled. For a few weeks, I moved through grief and anger like alternating radio stations. Some days, I replayed every lie he told. Other days, I blasted Beyoncé's Break My Soul while cleaning the house like an exorcism ritual. Then, the lawyer called again. Terrence had filed for divorce and requested financial compensation for contributions made during the marriage. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the phone. He wanted money. My money. That's when something inside me snapped into focus. "Fine, Terrence. You want to play games? Let's play chess." I called my financial advisor, expanded my investments, and discreetly moved all funds into trusts under Jefferson Holdings LLC, a company I'd registered long before marriage. Legally, Terrence's name appeared nowhere. When his lawyer reached out for settlement talks, mine sent a polite, devastating email summarizing how every major asset, including the house, was in my name, bought with premarital funds. The look on Terrence's face at the hearing was worth every tear I'd shed. He tried to act calm, but his eyes darted between the documents and me like a man realizing the ATM was empty. "Ms. Jefferson," the judge said, "it appears all assets were acquired before the marriage. Therefore, they remain separate property." Terrence's lawyer muttered something under his breath. Terrence just sat there, jaw clenched, watching his dream dissolve. That night, after it was over, I drove through downtown Houston, windows down, wind whipping through my hair. For the first time in months, I felt free. But freedom comes with silence, and silence leaves space for reflection. How did I, a woman who knew numbers better than emotions, let myself be fooled like that? Maybe because I wanted to believe love didn't have an invoice attached. Maybe because I thought choosing someone ambitious meant choosing someone like me. Now I knew better. Love shouldn't be a business merger. And I wasn't a bailout plan. When I got home that night after the court hearing, Houston looked different. The streetlights flickered like they were winking at me. The air smelled freer, lighter, like possibility instead of disappointment. I kicked off my heels, poured a glass of red wine, and finally exhaled. Divorce. The word no longer stung. It sounded like closure. I curled up on the couch, scrolling through the photos in my phone. There we were, smiling at some restaurant, pretending we were happy. I almost deleted them all, but then I stopped. Let the evidence stay. Every picture was proof of a lesson learned. For weeks after the divorce, I moved differently. There's something about betrayal that wakes up the savage inside you. I stopped apologizing for being intimidating. I stopped explaining my boundaries like disclaimers. I stopped shrinking. I poured myself into work. My analytics firm had been doing well, but I wanted more. I rebranded, hired 2 new consultants, and expanded into real estate advisory. My client base tripled. Then I invested again, this time in a solar tech company that was getting traction in Texas. Within 8 months, my returns were higher than my grandmother's entire inheritance. It was poetic justice. I had become the woman Terrence wanted to marry, but without him, I actually was her. Houston society can be small when your money starts to make noise. Suddenly, I was getting invitations to networking galas, charity luncheons, women in business panels. I didn't care much for the small talk, but I liked walking into a room where my name meant something that I built. At one such gala, while sipping champagne and pretending to understand a conversation about crypto, I heard a voice behind me say, "Maya Jefferson. Still too smart for your own good, I see." I turned, and my heart did a small, involuntary jump. Marcus Reed, my ex-colleague from the old accounting firm, before I quit to start my consultancy. Marcus had always been easy on the eyes, tall, clean fade, sharp jawline, and annoyingly brilliant. We'd flirted years ago, but I was with Terrence then, and Marcus respected that. He grinned. Heard you're killing it in finance now. Houston Chronicle did a feature last month. You didn't tell me you'd turned into a mogul. I smirked. Guess I was busy doubling my inheritance. He laughed. Still witty. Glad success didn't steal that. We talked for hours that night, mostly about business, sometimes about everything else. It felt natural, effortless in a way love had never been with Terrence. When Marcus dropped me off at my car, he said, "You ever need a business partner, or just a reason to smile again, call me." And for the first time in a long time, I wanted to. But peace has a way of being interrupted by people who can't stand seeing you move on. 3 months later, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Hello. Hey, Maya. I froze. That voice. Terrence. I almost hung up, but curiosity, and a little pettiness, kept me on the line. What do you want, Terrence? He sighed dramatically. Look, I know things ended badly, but I wanted to check on you. You've been in the news lately. You're doing big things. I rolled my eyes. You didn't call to congratulate me. What's the pitch? He paused, then dropped the act. I'm starting a new venture, real estate marketing. I figured we could collaborate. You've got connections, I've got ideas. I nearly choked on my coffee. Terrence, the only thing you've got is audacity. Come on, Maya, he said smoothly. Let's not be childish. We were good together once. I smiled to myself. Yeah, until I learned you were good at pretending. He tried one more time. Don't let pride get in the way of opportunity. I took a slow breath, savoring the moment. Oh, sweetheart, pride didn't build my empire. Wisdom did. Goodbye. And I hung up. A week later, I saw him again, by accident. I'd been invited to speak at a real estate expo downtown. As I stepped onto the stage, in my cream suit and heels that could silence a room, I noticed him in the crowd. Terrence, sitting near the back, pretending to take notes. I didn't flinch. I delivered my talk, smooth, witty, confident, about investment strategy and financial independence. When it ended, people lined up to shake my hand. I could feel his eyes burning holes into my back. Afterward, he approached me. Didn't expect to see you here, I said, arms folded. He smiled weakly. Guess we're in the same industry now. Industry? I repeated. No, Terrence. I'm in the business of success. You're in the hobby of trying to stay relevant. A few people nearby snickered. He flushed. You always think you're better than everyone. No, I said calmly. Just better than the version of me who tolerated mediocrity. I walked away. By the next month, Jefferson Holdings had expanded into Dallas. I'd hired a team, secured investors, and signed a deal with a luxury housing firm. The woman who once questioned her worth now signed 7-figure contracts over coffee. But it wasn't just money anymore. It was purpose. I started mentoring young women, especially those who'd been financially manipulated by partners. I created a scholarship fund in my grandmother's name for women studying finance. Watching their gratitude reminded me of how far I'd come. Still, life had one more twist for me. One Friday afternoon, Marcus invited me to lunch. We met at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the city. I was halfway through my salad when he said, So, rumor has it your ex is in trouble. I raised an eyebrow. Define trouble. He tried launching that marketing firm, right? Turns out he scammed a few investors. Someone filed charges. I blinked, surprised but not shocked. Terrence, scamming investors? That tracks. Marcus grinned. Guess karma doesn't need GPS. I laughed. No, but it sure drives a Tesla. He chuckled, then leaned forward. You ever think about how things work out exactly the way they should? I met his gaze. Every day. There was a moment of silence, the kind that hums with unspoken possibility. Then he said softly, You know, I always wondered what would have happened if I'd asked you out back then. I smiled. Maybe the universe was waiting for me to level up first. He grinned. Good thing you did. Because now, I'm not intimidated by you, I'm inspired. It was the first compliment in years that didn't sound like manipulation. Months passed. Marcus and I started collaborating on projects. Then dinners, then late-night calls that blurred the line between business and something deeper. He never rushed me. Never made me feel like I owed him softness. And when he finally kissed me one evening after a long day of meetings, it wasn't fireworks, it was calm. The kind of peace that feels like home. 1 year later, Jefferson Holdings was one of Houston's fastest-growing investment firms. I'd just signed a partnership with an energy company expanding into Africa. The press called me the silent mogul. At the launch gala, reporters swarmed me for photos. And somewhere in that glittering crowd, I spotted him again. Terrence. He looked smaller, worn out. Maybe it was regret, or maybe it was the realization that the woman he'd underestimated had become untouchable. He walked over cautiously. Maya, he said, his tone oddly humble. You look incredible. Success is a good moisturizer, I replied dryly. He smiled faintly. I was stupid. Yes, I said. Yes, you were. He hesitated. I heard about your foundation. You're really doing something meaningful. I nodded. I learned that money means nothing if it doesn't help someone else. He swallowed. I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you. For a split second, I saw the man I thought he was, charming, full of potential. But illusions are best left buried. Thank you, I said simply. I'm proud of me too. And then I turned away, leaving him standing there, surrounded by everything he'd ever wanted, but none of it his. As the night went on, I stepped out onto the balcony overlooking the city. The skyline glittered, the air was warm, and somewhere below, Houston pulsed like the heartbeat of resilience itself. Marcus joined me, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. To freedom, he said, handing me one. To wisdom, I added. We clinked glasses. He looked at me with that calm admiration I'd once begged to feel from someone else. You know, he said, people keep saying your story's inspirational. They don't know the half of it. I smiled, staring at the lights dancing across the city. They don't need to. The results speak louder than revenge. And they did, because the best revenge wasn't a ruined ex-husband. It was a woman who rebuilt herself so completely that he'd never recognize the version he tried to destroy.